My name is Patrick. I'm one of the pastors here at Northern Hills, and I feel blessed to be in front of you today. I'm speaking about peace. Of course, this is the first Sunday of Advent, and over the next 4 weeks, you'll get a different pastor in each service every day, and we're excited about this rotation as we were in a meeting to discuss who would get which topic for the Advent season in our rotation. I remember thinking, sitting there, okay, you're the lowest guy in the totem pole. You're the newest one. So you can't go and just claim whatever you want. You have to wait and see what everybody else wants first. And I was thinking to myself, okay, just peace. You want peace, but you'll take anything. You want peace, you'll take anything. You want peace, you'll take anything. What? And there's no peace in that. Yeah, okay. And then finally, everybody was going around, and Pastor Pino goes, Patrick, how about peace for you? And I was like, hey, that's great. Thanks. It's what I wanted anyway for the holiday season, was peace. And so I'm happy to be talking to you all about it. We are used, of course, a PowerPoint in this service, so you'll see me referencing. This is the scripture. I went through a couple of different ones before I finally chose to put this one in front of you. This is from Paul, but we will get back to it in just a second. Now, one of the first things I thought about when I thought I was going to speak to you about peace was I thought of this statement. Si vis pacem parabellum. Some of you might recognize it. It is Latin, and it's a paraphrase from an author named Flavius Vegetus. He is a Roman military general who wrote a military and strategy book about the 4th or 5th century AD. And this is paraphrased from him. Si vis pacem parabellum means if you desire peace, prepare for war. And I have to tell you, the concept behind this, I believe, is true. Now, for him, for Vegetus, it was if a group of people, a society or community is strong enough in their preparation for battle that no one will desire to attack them, so that they will be ready. But I can tell you, this played out in my house this past week. I had family in from Chicago and in from Tulsa. There was multiple kids. My son, who is 8, is the oldest, all the way down to 2-year-old. I had my wife's twin sister in the house as well. And I can tell you that there was no peace at our house. I can tell you that we did prepare, though. We refinished furniture. We refinished a door. We set up extra beds. We washed towels. We washed sheets. We found and purchased extra pillows. We bought snacks. Oh, did we buy snacks? Costco, Trader Joe's, Walmart, H-E-B. We saw them all this past week. We had the salty snacks. We had the sandwich snacks. We had the sweet snacks. We had the gummy snacks. We had the cheese and crackers. We had the adult snacks, the chips, the salsa, the guacamole. We had it. It was covered. If you wanted a snack, we had it. Definitely. And we thought we were prepared for war. And we were wrong. War still happened. There was still weeping. There was still gnashing of teeth. There were still arguments between the children. Sometimes the children were the ones arguing. We were ready to go with this, and we still saw war. So though I don't disagree with Vegetus, I don't necessarily agree with him anyway, because being prepared doesn't always keep you from war. Case in point, 2 days ago was Black Friday. And as you see, this dove is the Prince of Peace. Is the bird of peace. And it has an evil red eye. That evil red eye is Target. If you have been to the Target parking lot, you know what war is like. I've never seen a sweet, innocent little old lady and how people have to dive out of the way as she's driving down the Target parking lot to find that one spot. And that's just to get inside. As someone said, inside a Target is even worse. It's Thunderdome in there. There are no rules. Like carts hitting each other, children running around. If you want something, you got to grab it and put it in your cart or it's going to be gone. It's crazy in there. That is the holiday season. And this is the time that we're preparing for this season of Advent, this season of peace, this season of getting to know the Lord, this season of preparing for the Christmas holiday season, the season of peace. Now, this, of course, is a graphic that talks about who Christ is. You see the dove there, the bird of peace, and the star. Jesus came to bring peace to the world. He is the Prince of Peace. He even said this is what the angels were singing over the shepherds the day he was born. Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace and goodwill toward men. This is what we think of when we think about Christmas. This is a time that we find peace in our lives, right? No, not even close. As Catherine said, it is a stressful time in our lives. It is a crazy time. We're always prepping and preparing and prepping and preparing and worrying and all the things that we have going on in our lives. But Christ came to bring us peace. There's a disconnect there. And that disconnect plays out in some serious ways in our world. In the last 2,000 years, there has been 14,351 wars that have been declared. A grand total of 3.63 billion deaths. That's half the world's population. And the cost of those wars in preparation and in property damage, if it was converted to gold, would be a gold belt around the equator that was 97.2 miles wide and 33 feet thick. If we didn't have wars in our life, we could literally wrap our earth in gold. Wars are costly. They're here. These statistics are given you through a Norwegian stat that I found online. And as I read the article that they were attached to, it said that of the last 2,000 years, the group found that maybe 2 were war-free in our world. But Christ came to be the Prince of Peace. Christ came to be peace in this world. There's a disconnect there. How can we have so much war and death and Christ still claim to be the Prince of Peace? You might think, well, Patrick, hold on. Christ came to be a personal, something that's internal into us. I can understand that. He didn't say that he was bringing peace to this earth as far as no wars. He said that he was going to bring us peace. So let me ask you these questions. Do you believe in God? I'm assuming that if you're here on a Sunday morning, 1, you do believe in God, or 2, your family forced you to come because it's after Thanksgiving, or 3, you were with your family and you had a religious experience because of it, so you're here. And the last is, do you know God? That's the subset. I'm also going to make the assumption that most of you are either saying, I know God, or I'm trying to get to know God. Do you answer yes to the first question and yes or maybe to the second question? And let me ask you this one. Do you have a deep, consistent, abiding sense of peace in your life? And let me guess that every one of you is probably in the area of saying, maybe, sometimes, every once in a while, something along those lines. I'm in that same spot. I'm still trying to wrestle with the idea of how do I develop myself? How do I get better at the things that I'm trying to do and have this sense of contentment and peace? When I figure out the answer, I'll write a book and you can buy it. Definitely. How do we have a sense of peace in life? How do we find a personal sense of peace in our life? Let's talk about the source of peace. The source of peace is Christ. This is the second verse from our Advent reading today. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. The first 2 phrases is what I want to focus on. Peace is not something that the Lord facilitates in our life. He doesn't send us away or send us to go find peace someplace else. The Lord says, I leave you with peace. My peace I give you. The source of peace in our lives is Christ himself. It is our relationship with Christ and our relationship with his Father. That is the source of peace. It is not found anywhere else. Now you might think that, okay, Christ lived a life then that was void of conflict. And you would not be correct. Christ lived a life that had conflict in it. He was constantly in conflict with the religious leaders of his time, the Pharisees and Sadducees. There was this cleansing of the temple that was a violent, even outpouring of Christ. And then we have this. This is what Jesus answered to Pontius Pilate. The day before he was killed, the day he was killed, Christ was standing before Pontius Pilate. And Pilate, who was a Roman governor at the time, the man with all the power in the area, said, "You know I have the power to set you free, or I have the power to torture and crucify you." And Christ delivered this line back to him. And every time I see it, I see him almost yawning as he says it. "You would have no power over me if we're not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of the greater sin." Now, that person they're talking about, the one guilty of greater sin, is Herod. King Herod, as the king of Israel, was supposed to be the first and amongst them as a religious leader, but he had traded in that spot as a religious leader to be a puppet king to a powerful Roman governor. So Herod was the one who had traded power for his position as a religious leader. And Christ was the one who was standing before Pilate as the one about to die. And Christ, even though he was in front of someone who had the power over him to do violent things, and violent things were just about to happen to Christ, he still met that with a sense of peace, knowing where power resided. Now you might also be thinking, "Patrick, yeah, but that's Jesus. He's the Son of God. He's the King of Kings. He's the God-man. He had a sense of peace, but that doesn't necessarily mean that in my life I have peace." Let's talk about Paul. This is our theme verse for the day, Colossians. "Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body you were called to peace, and be thankful." Fairly straightforward. Paul, the writer of 2/3 of the New Testament, is telling us, hey, find peace in your life. Be thankful. You're members of a body, a group. And you would think that after writing this, that Paul would have a life that was all, wine and roses, or, holidays, Thanksgiving and cranberry sauce. All the things that we think Paul would have, but that's not the case at all. Paul lived a life that was constantly under stress. He wrote this in 2 Corinthians, and this is a smaller verse. I'm going to turn around and read it because it's a lot faster here. 5 times I received the Jews, the 40 lashes minus 1. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was pelted with stones. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a night and a day in the open sea. I have been constantly on the move. I have been in danger from the rivers, in danger from the bandits, in danger from my fellow Jews, in danger from Gentiles, in danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea, and in danger from false believers. I have labored and toiled, and I have not gone without sleep. I have often gone without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst, and have gone without food. I have been cold and naked. Besides everything else, I face daily the pressures of my concerns for all the churches. Doesn't sound like peace. Doesn't sound like Paul, someone who we can emulate in our life, had what we think of as a stress-free existence. So how do we reconcile this? Well, let me tell you a story when I learned something about peace. Almost anyone in this room who is 30 or above can tell you precisely where they were on September 11th, 2001. I was in seminary. I had classes stacked in the morning. I had Hebrews class, and then I had philosophy of Christian religion, one of my favorites at seminary. And right after that, we had a mandatory chapel. Well, semi-mandatory chapel. And so I went and I sat down in the back just like it was a normal day. And the chaplain for the seminary came and he put his hands up and he says, "Okay, obviously we're not having a regular chapel service today because of what's happened. So we're going to have a prayer service instead." And I was in the back, seated alone. I had no idea what had happened. I didn't have an iPhone. Wi-Fi wasn't available at that time. I know I'm ancient. And so I sat there and I looked around to see if there was anybody around me who I could ask a question of what happened. And nobody was there. And so I sat through a prayer service that was really long. Half of me wanted to focus on the prayer, and the other half of me was tormented by the question, what has happened? What has happened? What has happened? And everybody around me, there was people in tears. There was people who were praying loudly. There was people who were praying silently. And I was so conflicted. I wanted to run, but at the same time, I didn't. I just sat there. And so after the service, I did run. I ran home. And I flipped on TV. It was seminary. I didn't have cable. We had 3 stations. They all had the news going. And they were all talking about the same thing. We don't know what's happening. We know that there's possibly been an attack. We know that a plane has flown into a tower. We're getting reports of other things happening, but we don't know what they are. And it was the same 3 or 4 sentences over and over and over. And then I realized why they didn't tell us what happened in the seminary service. Because they didn't know. All they knew is what the news was able to tell them, and all the news was able to tell them is what might be happening in our country at the time. After about 30 minutes to an hour of watching the news repeat itself, I grew frustrated. And I knew I couldn't study, and I didn't feel like working out. I wanted to stay close to a news source, so I did what I often do when I have nothing else to do. I chose a movie. Now, of course, again, seminary student, so I didn't go to Netflix. It did not exist yet. I didn't go to my DVD collection because I didn't have DVDs. At the time, I had VHS. And for those of you who don't know, VHS is a box. It's smaller than this. It has magnetic tape on it, which has a movie in very low quality. And the gravest of sins is not to rewind it. And I selected a movie. I selected Air Force One, if some of you are familiar. It is a movie, it's a patriotic action movie from the 90s. Gary Oldman plays a Russian terrorist, and Harrison Ford plays Harrison Ford as the president. And at the very start of that movie, maybe like the first 5 minutes, Harrison Ford gives a speech as president. And he says these words. He says that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice. That line, though I owned the movie and though I had seen the movie probably several times, I had never noticed it before. I actually just stopped and thought about that and kind of missed a lot of the rest of the movie as I thought. Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice. I learned something about peace that day. But as Hollywood does, it only got it half right. Because I believe that the first part is true, that peace is not necessarily the absence of conflict in our lives. But I do believe that peace is more than just the presence of justice. It's the presence of something greater than that in our lives. That peace is the presence of Christ in our lives. That if we believe in a creator who is all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-loving, and we trust that creator, then the reaction that we have is peace. Peace is more than the absence of conflict. In fact, peace can happen in the presence of conflict because the presence of God is there. This is the last verse I'll share with you today. It's from Isaiah. And this is the prayer. If you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. This is Christmas. This is the time that we exchange presents. This is the time where we give gifts to each other. And much consternation is given to how much people will spend on a gift for us. I'm trying to figure out if my cousin is going to spend $20 or $50 or $100 on me. Why? Because I need to match that. If he gives me this, I need to give him that. If he gives me this, I need to give him that. Every once in a while, grandmother will give me something that's handmade, and I have nothing to give. I have nothing for you, Grandma. Why? Because this is too great. It's the same with Christ. It's the same with our Lord. He asks for our trust. And what he gives back is something that's greater than that. He gives peace. But he just starts with peace. Because once the Lord gives peace, then the joy and the hope and the love come with it. So this season, as you enter into a time, remember that peace is translated as shalom. It's not the absence of conflict in our lives, but it's the presence of the Lord provides wholeness, completeness, wellness, protection. And when we experience it, and we give the Lord our trust, we can experience perfect peace, no matter what situation we're in.